Hello, my name is Disha Ahluwalia and welcome to ThePrint. To be an archaeologist is to trace the past in the ordinary. Archaeology is not just a study of things and material buried under the ground, but is also the study of analyzing everyday traditions and practices and trying to find links to the past. In doing so, a trained archaeologist sort of ends up finding everything archaeologically in tune and significant in the most mundane things of everyday life. The similar thing happened to me when I visited a workshop located in Ahmedabad over 2 years ago. I came across this workshop on social media and I was instantly intrigued. My point of interest was really the fact that the artisans were making pots in terracotta. Terracotta, which is nothing but burnt clay, is the material used by early humans right from 7000 to 6000 BCE in the Indian subcontinent and much earlier outside the subcontinent. But it was an important invention. Why it's important? Because it enabled early societies to store food in a much more better containers. It also gave more opportunities for early societies to cook food and also to store cooked food. This invention came with making vessels out of terracotta. Clay, which is burned in a kiln, gave a way to an indestructible and valuable piece of evidence, which is considered as antiquity by archaeologists. So, when I came across this workshop, I saw artisans making big, huge pots and vessels from terracotta. I was instantly surprised because to me, contemporary practices are done usually in porcelain or chini mitti. If you buy ceramic in the market today, you will find pottery made with white clay or kaolin, not terracotta. So terracotta has sort of became very uncommon in day-to-day life. So when I saw these artisans making big vessels, big pots, planters in terracotta, I was sort of intrigued because this was not just our Kumhar selling diyas on the side during Diwali. It was not about that. It was actually about making big terracotta pots with artistic touch to it. So I ended up going to the workshop. And when I went to the workshop, I was surprised. What I found out was that this very workshop is a 21st century ethnoarchaeology classroom where you have artisans who migrated from Tamil Nadu all the way to Gujarat, and the reason why they did so is because of the patronage and the freedom of expression was given to them by the founders of this very workshop. This is a story of Rajka Pottery, which is an initiative that gave the INR artisans the space, the patronage, and created freedom to practice their traditional craft in a new setting. In doing so, it has become like a 21st century example of how continuity and change coexist. It is also became a place where pottery traditions are not simply preserved but continually reimagined for a new market and for a new generation. Pottery is known as the alphabet of archaeology. It is indestructible and is indispensable. Archaeologists use the shards of terracotta vessels to understand the past, to not just date the past, but also to understand the manufacturing technique, the ceramic tradition that existed within a period of time, the changes in the ceramic traditions, and also it tells us about the socio-economic changes of the society from time to time. Pottery, therefore, is a very integral part of archaeological investigation, and a simple shot can really tells us a lot more than what meets the eye. Indian subcontinent has the longest and the most diverse ceramic traditions, stretching back to Neolithic period from Mehergarh in Balochistan in present-day Pakistan to Laura Deva in UP. Pottery is dated to the Neolithic period, the ceramic phase of Neolithic period, which is dated somewhere between 7000 to 6000 BCE. The pottery initially was largely handmade pottery. What actually happened was that early humans took clay, they levigated the clay, took baskets and took mats and sort of shaped the clay in a vessel and then took that and baked it in the kiln. That gave an appearance of a very crude sort of a vessel, which was not very fine, the way one expects ceramic or pottery, terracotta pots to look like. But eventually, with time, this technique, these traditions were evolved. With time, wheel pottery was introduced into the subcontinent, a wheel thrown pottery was introduced, and that became widespread. Initially, hands of the potters was used as the tool. It's not that the wheels sort of replace that very effort. Potters use their hand all the time to craft and to shape the pots. Initially, where it was largely handmade, as time progressed, it became wheel made and also handmade. I have to tell you that when the potters throw the clay on the wheel and shape it, they still have to use the hand with the help of dabbar, which is largely terracotta dabbar, and wooden paddle to shape it. You will find this being done especially in the pots which have a globular profile or a globular, like the ones which used pitchers which are used to store water in your households, especially during summer. So these very pots are sort of given shape with the help of dabber and pedal, and hands became an important tool. Their extraordinary skills and their methodologies have shaped societies in the past. Yet handmade pottery or slab based pottery never disappeared. It sort of coexisted in many parts of the subcontinent in various communities. For example, in Tamil Nadu, who continue to make in Tamil Nadu, terracotta vessels are made with both hand and also wheel. Even not just the vessels, but also big animal figurines, be it horse, elephant, even the deities are shaped by hands of the potter, which was a refreshing take for me as an archaeologist who study pottery every day to understand the past. When I visited this very workshop, I was completely intrigued because all of these elements were used. Potter were using hands. There was no wheel thrown pottery at all. They were using their hands as tools to not just shape the pottery, but also to make it look beautiful and fine. If you look at the pottery, you will not feel that they were actually shaped by artisans. But that's the skill, right? That's where the story lies. And this is the story of Rajka, which is based in Ahmedabad. In the early 1980s, Rajshri Sarabhai, who's a co-founder of both Rajka Design and Rajka Pottery, met with an artisan from Tamil Nadu. V. Sambadham, who was an INR artisan who met Rajshri in Ahmedabad along with his terracotta INR deity sculptures. His expertise did not really lie in making pots, but in creating monumental horses 7 to 8 feet high, 7 to 8 feet tall. Elephants, guardian figures, deities, etc., have long been part of the INR tradition. Even today, if you go to various districts of Tamil Nadu, you will find these sculptures, these figurines being used as offerings to the god, to the deity. Around the same time, Rashri Sarabhai was also developing an interest in ceramics. So when she saw this big horse figurine and the figurine of Ayana deity, she immediately identified that these were made by coiling technique. And she asked artisan if he could also make pots, big, huge vessels which could replicate the copper and the brass vessels. And he agreed. He said that he would experiment. And with that, they established a small workshop in their family home at Ahmedabad. At the time, he had never made pots before, and his expertise lay largely creating traditional sculptures. Together, they both began experimenting in new forms, adapting ancient sculptures tradition into functionally pottery. Their first collection consisted of hand built terracotta pots from 1 to 5 feet high. Many were inspired by Indian traditional metal vessels, which are the brass vessels, particularly those found in Gujarat. This became Rajka Pottery's very first collection and marked the beginning of a journey that continues to celebrate traditions, craftsmanship, while creating contemporary objects rooted in India's living ceramic traditions. More than 4 decades later, today Rajka Pottery has remain committed to preserving India's handmade terracotta tradition while reinterpreting ancient forms for contemporary life. Current collection draw inspiration from Harappan civilization, where they also make sculptures and figurines such as the humped bull, which is very famous in the Harappan context. As well as other archaeological ceramic. And Rajka is dedicated to experiment more and try to revive and recreate archaeological traditions and ceramic traditions which are largely forgotten and not known. Now, while you would listen to me and you would wonder how is this linked to archaeology, how is Rajka, which is a contemporary ceramic workshop located in Ahmedabad, how is that really important from an archaeological point of view? Well, for firstly, unlike conventional wheel thrown tradition, which are widely associated with South Asian pottery, Rajka really employs hand building techniques, particularly coiling, as well as drawing technological practices such as using terracotta dabbers, wooden paddles. They also use traditional kiln to fire and bake their pottery. This presents a unique case of mobility and persistence of ceramic cultures beyond the original regional context. You see potters migrating from Tamil Nadu all the way to Ahmedabad because of the patronage and also where space was given for a dying art to survive. Hand coiling is not a very common technique that you really end up seeing even in archaeological context. We know as archaeologists largely the storage jars and big pots were made by luting and coiling. But then here you have a case which do not use, where artisans do not use wheel at all. They take large coils of clay and they put it on top of each other and use their hand to really knead it and join it through and then use dabber and use paddle to make it a seamless pot, but not just a small pot but large pots. The absence of water wheel foregrounds embodied skill and manual dexterity, emphasizing pottery making as a deeply learned and transmitted practices. It also breaks the stereotype of real pottery that happens with wheel. We often feel that the handmade pottery is more archaic. It goes way back into antiquity, and the moment wheel comes, handmade pottery really becomes non-existent. But this really breaks that very stereotype. It tells us that handmade pottery, handmade ceramic and terracotta objects existed way back, even till the present context, and they cannot be put really in a primitive and an archaic category. What is also unique here at Rajka is that these techniques are sustained with contemporary, more design-oriented production system, reflecting both continuity of traditions, willingness to adapt to economic changes and market conditions. It also aims at giving these artisans a space to make a living by not giving up their practices. We see in India many potters, especially those who work with terracotta, are giving up their craft because it's not economically viable. But here's the case where you have a community being created, although it was started by two people in 1980s, but now you have community created at Rajka, where you have generations, the second generation of artisans working in the very workshop with new production system, with contemporary design, with market conditions. It also gives these artisans space to continue with the art, to refine it, to experiment with it, and to also keep changing with it and to learn. Isn't that the purpose of art? Really, we also see in ethnoarchaeology that the potters, the second generation, don't want to take up, the younger generation don't want to take up pottery making because it's not lucrative. But here you have a place which gives artisans space to do so, all while being economically viable. Rajka case really challenges the static and regional bound interpretation of ceramic traditions by demonstrating that technological practices are dynamic, transferable, continue, and recontextualized. We see that as archaeologists, we keep ceramic in a very regional perspective. We keep it very regionally bound. But where you see here in a present context, in 21st century context, artisans who moved to Ahmedabad just to sort of sell their product ended up having space. It also shows that perhaps in the past, similar concept must have happened. It all depends on finding patronage and finding space for artistic freedom, for creative freedom. The persistence of coiling technique highlights resilience of non-wheel traditions, which is really very unique, which remains underrepresented in archaeological interpretation in South Asian ceramics. By situating Rajka pottery within the broader discussion of material culture and craft production, one can reflect that continuity in pottery traditions is an active process shaped by mobility, innovation, and cultural negotiation. For an archaeologist, the most remarkable aspect of Rajka pottery is not simply the pottery is handmade, but how it's made. The coils of the clay placed on top of each other, shaped by potter's hand, further perfected by dabbar and paddle. The tools used even by ancient potters is to witness technology that predates the wheel, echoes some of the earliest ceramic traditions of the subcontinent. It reminds us that traditions do not survive by remaining frozen in time, they endure. And because each generation finds new way to mold them, much like the clay itself. So this is just one such story of continuity, one such story of pottery being reinvented in 21st century, and it's important even if it's contemporary. It's important to understand the past. If you like the story, please hit the like button and also share it on social media platform. And if you like such similar stories on Print's platform, please hit the like button and also subscribe it to Print at various social media platform and especially on YouTube. I'll be back with more such stories which connects past to the present. So thank you once again for listening.